Good morning, everyone. I'm Marianne Hernandez, and I'll be facilitating the workshop today. On behalf of the Active Transportation Resource Center, I'd like to welcome you to the District 6 workshop. I'll be facilitating today's meeting. Our workshop is entitled Considering Non-Infrastructure Programs to Enhance Project Impact on Active Transportation Combination Projects. Thank you so much for joining us. I also want to recognize my teammate at the ATRC, Judy Polikoff, will be working behind the scenes. So thanks, Judy, for all your help. First off, I'd like to introduce Jim Peralt. He's the District 6 Local Assistance Engineer. Jim leads a team of 12 staff that manage the local assistant program in the California's central region, serving over 50 local agencies in 5 counties. The counties are Madero, Fresno, Kings, Tulare, and Kern. I hope a lot of you are on the call today, so welcome. Jim began his career 32 years ago, working first for a small private engineering firm and then working for the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power before moving to Fresno and starting his career with Caltrans. In 1998, Jim has led the local assistance team in District 6 since 2006. And joining Jim will be Pedro Maffei. He is the District 6 Active Transportation Program Coordinator. I'll turn it over to you, Jim and Pedro.
Hey, thank you, Marianne, and welcome to everybody. We're excited to have you join us today for this webinar. It's now been honestly over a couple of years with the pandemic since we've been able to hold a webinar or a meeting in person. And so I look forward to the days when we can do that again, but we've discovered, this technology that helps get information out, and it's really helpful. So we're grateful that the folks from the Active Transportation Research Center could join us today. We're looking forward to their presentation. We've got Cycle 6 that's upcoming for ATP. I know that we have in our district, we have I think about 125 ATP projects. Of those, we still have probably just shy of 100 that are in some form of activity still. And so we have a very active program here in our district, and this is an opportunity to learn about more about non-infrastructure opportunities and ways of including those in future projects. So we're excited about this presentation and the opportunity to learn about that. Again, we welcome you, and let me just hand it off to Pedro Maffei. I think all of you know Pedro and worked with him closely. He's our coordinator for the ATP program in the district. Go ahead, Pedro.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jim. Welcome. I'm Pedro Maffei, the District 6 ATP program coordinator for our region. I started my engineering career 22 years ago with Caltrans, and then I left and worked for 2 different private consulting firms, and I returned back to Caltrans headquarters in Sacramento in 2008. I worked in Sacramento until 2015, and I joined District 6 in 2015. And I have been the ATP program coordinator since then. I helped draft the guidelines originally because we were adopting something that was kind of existing with Safe Route to School program, and trying to implement new guidelines for this ATP program. I have worked with most of agencies regarding their ATP projects. As Jim mentioned, we have about 129 ATP projects. About 100 of them are still active. And out of that 100 project, we have, I would say, about 40% of them that have some component of NI, that have some kind of NI component in them, whether it be just a non-infrastructure project or a plan or some kind of education system. And we're always trying to figure out a way to advocate for our local agencies and try to find a way to implement these projects as smoothly as possible. In the future, if you guys have any questions or concerns, always feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. Anyone who has worked with me previously knows that I always advocate for local agencies, and I'm always available for phone calls or emails, and we always try to find solutions. With that, I pass it back to our host.
Thanks so much, Pedram, and thanks for being available to all the projects and helping them achieve success. So thanks so much for that as well, Jim. Now, we'd like to get a poll to see how many of you, the poll question is, will you apply or have you applied in the past for an ATP combination or non-infrastructure project? The answers are yes, no. It looks like, thanks. The responses are coming in. Okay. We have a small group today, but it looks like many of you have. So hopefully you'll learn a few new things about non-infrastructure today, and I'm sure you will. I certainly did during our practice session, and will motivate you who have not, and those who haven't applied or have not applied but are thinking about it. Thanks so much. Again, thank you for joining us, and we welcome you from the Active Transportation Resource Center, also Caltrans, and the California Department of Public Health, which is part of contracted through ATRC. So thank you so much for coming today. Today, we are hosting the webinar to share the latest non-infrastructure information and tools to assist with the upcoming Cycle 6 grant, to continue your existing grant NI deliverables, and or plan for future ATP grant cycles if you're not applying this time. Here is today's agenda. You'll notice it's broken up into 4 parts. The first part is an overview of existing training resources and District 6 funded projects. The next section is an overview of resources and examples of non-safe routes to school, non-infrastructure activities. That is education and encouragement activities. You'll hear from 2 programs and their experience getting ATP grants and pivoting NI activities during these difficult times, the COVID times. And finally, we'll get specific tips for the upcoming Cycle 6 grant. We'll be taking questions throughout the webinar, so please put them in the question and answer box if you have questions. If you have problems with technology or can't hear one of the speakers, go ahead and put that in the chat. Our first speaker today is Emily Abrahams. Emily is a senior transportation planner at Caltrans in the Division of Local Assistance, where she serves as the Active Transportation Program Non-Infrastructure Program Manager and Active Transportation Resource Center Project Manager. She has been with Caltrans for almost 12 years and has a planning degree from UC Davis. Go ahead, Emily.
All right, thanks, Marianne. I will share my screen. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today, and I will be talking about the ATRC. We'll kick off the day just giving you an overview of what the ATRC is, as well as some existing resources that we have that will probably be very helpful to you. So on my screen here, I've gone to the Active Transportation Resource Center, or ATRC website. It's caatpresources.org. So I'm just going to give you a little tour of our website and show you kind of where existing resources are located. And then I'll go over some training that we have that's existing that will be helpful to you. So here on my screen, this is our website, as I mentioned. The Active Transportation Resource Center. Our mission is to provide resources, training, and technical assistance to all of our transportation partners across California to increase the success of active transportation projects. So it directly correlates to the Active Transportation Program. But all of our resources span beyond just the ATP, and you could use it for any active transportation project, no matter how it's funded. So we hope there's lots of information here beyond the ATP as well as for the ATP. So here on our homepage, we have 3 buckets of information is how I like to classify it. We have training, resources, and technical assistance, as I mentioned in our mission statement. So each of these will take you to a wealth of information. But before we tour those, I just wanted to highlight here on our webpage in this kind of scrolling bar at the bottom, this is where we put our most recent or up-to-date information, our new information. So when we have a new newsletter that comes out, it'll get posted here on our homepage. If we have a new training opportunity available, it'll get posted here on our homepage so that you have a quick link to the registration or the resource or the document. And so it's easy for you to find it. So always check this banner on our website first for the latest, newest information. I also wanted to mention here at the bottom to join our mailing list. We have a mailing list, so if everyone goes to this website now, sign up for it if you're not already. We send out, emails with upcoming training opportunities, sometimes specific information for the ATP. When a new resource is available or a new newsletter comes out, we share it through our listserv. So we probably email maybe once a week, once every other week. It's not too much, but the emails that we do send out are very relevant. So we think you'll get a lot out of it. So definitely sign up if you are not signed up. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to click on here is our training information. So if you click on our training, it takes you to this page. We have items called flash training, which are quick tutorials, probably less than 10 minutes on different application topics. So you can click on this and you'll find a few different topics here that will be helpful for the application. We also have an On the Move series that's hosted by our California Department of Public Health. So these are our quarterly webinars and teleconferences. Super great information, very timely topics. Definitely check out these training availability. Like I said, they're quarterly, so we'll announce the new topic every quarter, and you can register and sign up for those. We also have all of our previous webinars and teleconferences archived, so you can go here and view anything we've done for the past probably 5 years. So lots of information there as well. We do offer classroom and online training. before the pandemic, classroom training used to actually be in classroom in person, but now a lot of it is through Zoom, and hopefully we'll be able to return to in-person soon. We also have had 2 multi-day conferences, which we call the Active Transportation Symposium. So you can go view the sessions here on our website. Again, lots of really excellent information from both of them in 2019 and 2021. So going back to our homepage, the next bucket I wanted to show you is our resources. And here we have, again, tons of information that'll help you. We have some infrastructure project related information, and each of these topics has a drop-down menu. So if you click on them, there'll be links to different resources that you can go to. Our non-infrastructure page, which is very relevant to this workshop. Again, there's some drop-down menus with different pieces of information and resources that will be helpful to your project. It's kind of broken down by topic. So if you're a Safe Routes to School project, there's a lot of information here. If you're doing any type of media campaign, there'll be some information here. So definitely check these out as well. Then we have a few different tools that we provide that all support active transportation. So you can kind of click on these next few links if you're interested in any of these topics, if you're not familiar with them. As I mentioned, we do quarterly newsletters. So all of our newsletters are posted here on our Active Transportation Messenger page. Again, tons of information included in these. And then we have some resources for the pandemic. And so you can access some of the information there as well. Back to our homepage, the last bucket here is our technical assistance. And so we offer a variety of different technical assistance options. The first one is our automated counter loan program. So this program, we have, I believe, 9 different automated counters. We have MyoVision and EcoCounter. And so we offer them to local agencies to borrow for a short period of time to do a temporary active transportation count. So if you're interested in borrowing a piece of counting equipment, the steps to borrowing are here on our website, and there's an interest form that you need to fill out. So definitely take advantage of this if you need to conduct counts, and you can use this kind of latest state-of-the-art equipment to do so. We also have a disadvantaged communities technical assistance program. And so this provides one-on-one technical assistance with local agencies in disadvantaged communities to help them build capacity and be competitive in the active transportation program. So we offer this every ATP cycle. And so it provides assistance and training and capacity building in support of application development. So we just launched this program a few months ago. We are selecting our recipients now, and we will be assisting them with our consultant, Nelson Nygaard, for this round, and they will be helping our recipients in cycle 6. So that's kind of what the program is. So stay tuned for every cycle if you're interested. We do release a call for recipients, and so definitely sign up if you're interested. Our next one will be for cycle 7. However, the training and resources that we do develop through this program, once they're given to the recipients, we do try to post them here so that they can be available to anyone in the state who's interested. So from our cycle 5 TA program, we have a few different workshops here that are recorded, and this information could be helpful to others as well. So definitely check this out. We have a summary report here. That kind of gives a highlight of what the technical assistance program does. Again, really interesting to read and understand what it does. All right, the last thing I wanted to mention here, which we'll probably bring up later in this call as well, is our non-infrastructure technical assistance team, which are the folks you kind of just met. Marianne, who's been hosting this, Judy, who's running the Zoom, and Victoria, who you'll hear from shortly. They each kind of have taken different districts, Caltrans districts in the state, and they can be a direct point of contact for any non-infrastructure programming related question. they know a lot, they are connected to a lot of resources, they can connect you to resources. So if you ever have a specific question that you just want to talk to someone about, definitely reach out to them. And their contact information is here. All right, so that's pretty much our overview or tour of our website. Hopefully it's pretty easy to understand and navigate. And hopefully this gives you, the ability to do that and not, be too overwhelmed with all of the information that we have there. We always keep it up to date as best as we can. So as new resources and trainings and recordings become available, we add them to our website. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we open it up to questions is this new resource. So I'll share this here. This is just very recently developed, and we'll be posting it to our website soon. And this essentially is a document that links you to all of the training that we have that's existing that'll help you with the application, the Active Transportation Program application. So we've divided it up into a few different sections. The first section here is for the ATP application. So like I mentioned, we have all the trainings recorded on our website, but if you want a quick one-stop area to access all the training, this document is where you'll find it. So we have a training that we've done on PSR equivalent, which is to make sure that the application is a sound application. This is a relatively long workshop that we did with the CTC, but the recording and the slides are here. We have our flash trainings that I mentioned. How to complete the non-infrastructure work plan is a good one and relevant to this audience, I'm sure. Partnering with the CCC, using the median household income, using the ATP TIMS tool. These are just kind of pieces of the application that you may want a little more insight on. And these flash trainings, like I said, 10-minute trainings that can just kind of help you get up to speed on what we're asking. And then there's some safety and other data needs workshop that will be helpful for the application. Moving on to the next page here, we have some project design trainings, and a lot of these were done with help from FHWA or from our technical assistance program and our previous technical assistance consultant, the Local Government Commission. So you can access any of these webinars to get more information on just project design, and you can, get some insight as to how it can influence maybe your project and how you can use that in your application. And then our non-infrastructure webinars, I mentioned, we have a wealth of history of all of our past webinars. So there's a variety of different topics. Many will be relevant to you. So you can access those here. And then this next section is for project implementation. So this section is kind of for once you are funded. So once your application does get funded, if you are successful in the ATP, these different trainings will be useful for you for determining what your next steps are and how you actually implement your project and follow the different processes and procedures for administration of your project. So we have a next steps workshop that we gave last summer, and some information about master agreements, the counting requirements, and reporting requirements. So there's some good trainings here as well. So again, we can share this resource with you after this webinar. We'll be posting it to our website, but it's a quick reference, one-stop shop for all of the different existing training we have that can be very helpful. Okay, so I think that's it for my presentation. So we'll open it up to questions. All right, I don't see anything in the Q&A. I don't see anything in the chat. But feel free to ask if you have any questions about what the ATRC does or what existing resources we have. Or if you have ideas for future resources, we're happy to hear that as well, as we're always trying to develop new things.
Thanks so much, Summer. Wow, that's a great tour. We have so much on the ATRC site, and it's an easy URL to remember, ATP resources. catpresources.org. So there's just tons there, and that last resource was just vital for folks that are looking to apply for this round. So thanks so much, Summary. That was very comprehensive. Thank you. Our next speaker is Victoria Custodio. She's our Technical Assistance ATRC lead, and she will be presenting, I'm sorry, my view. I'm sorry. She also works with Judy and I here at CDPH, as Emily mentioned, and she has worked with the ATP for over 10 years and has a wealth of experience working with safe routes to school and non-infrastructure programs. Welcome, Victoria.
Thanks so much, Marianne. And I'll just say, I always hate following Emily when we do presentations on a panel because she's such a wonderful speaker. So I'll try to do my section justice. So again, my name is Victoria Custodio, part of the Active Transportation Resource Center's non-infrastructure technical assistance team. And pleased to be here. And no need to go back to the agenda, but I am this presentation does encompass two pieces. So I am going to be speaking about different types of non-infrastructure activities that are worth exploring, giving the statewide perspective. But I also will be starting off with a quick overview of the non-infrastructure projects today, just the numbers, so that you can see kind of what's been supported through the ATP and where that distribution has occurred. All right, next slide, please. All right, so very quickly, we have, as many of you know, 5 funded cycles of ATP to date, which is wonderful. Over this time, the large majority of ATP projects have been infrastructure, primarily in nature, but non-infrastructure projects and combination projects and plans, of course, are vital components of the ATP, and they've managed to be selected as part of these fiercely competitive programs. We all know that the ATP is oversubscribed and highly competitive. So just at a glance, here's some facts for you. So to date, over the 5 cycles, we've seen 82 non-infrastructure only projects. And you can see the distribution over different cycles there. We've seen 140 combination projects over the last 5 cycles. Again, the numbers are in front of you to see. And then lastly, there's been about 54 planned projects over 5 cycles that have been funded. So that's just the high level view of the non-infrastructure projects that have been funded to date. Next slide. And then here's a little bit of a breakdown that we find interesting at the state. So this is kind of the distribution of non-infrastructure plans and combination projects by Caltrans district number. As you're aware, Caltrans has 12 districts, and so there's a PEDRAM equivalent at each of these districts, a GYM equivalent at each of the districts supporting active transportation projects, and so this is the distribution. So again, the total is 276, and we're seeing a large, number kind of coinciding with larger regions that have higher populations. And then in District 6, we've seen 27 non-infrastructure plans and combination projects over the 5 cycles. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's just a snapshot of District 6, which we, like to do when we get to do these special workshops for different parts of the state. So in District 6, we've seen 27 projects awarded over 5 cycles. And yes, all of this will be recorded. Thanks for chiming in. We'll make sure that everyone who's on this gets access to these slides afterwards. We have 13 projects. District 6 has 13 projects currently active, and that is 2 non-infrastructure only projects, 9 combination projects, and 2 planned projects. And then we've seen these particular cities with active, or these are the cities that we know have active awards at this point in time. So shout out to Delano, Fresno, Bakersfield, Parlier, Mendota, and then Kern-Coggett, which is the one of the MPOs in the District 6 area. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm shifting gears and I'm going to talk a little bit about our statewide perspective for non-infrastructure projects. So if you have previously applied for the ATP program, and we noticed that many of you had, and others are considering if they have not yet done it, and you're probably here because you're thinking about putting in for cycle 6. One of the elements in the application is this sheet that actually tracks the type of non-infrastructure project an applicant would be doing. And so this is our way of classifying different kinds of activities that would be under either a non-infrastructure plan or combination project type. So this we see as our bird's eye view. We get all of this information at the state level from all of the individual projects. And then from this, we're able to kind of discern what's the makeup of the non-infrastructure project composition, so that we, from each cycle, we can see this is really what's being funded and invested in at the community, local, county, or regional level through the ATP program. Okay, so next slide, please. So that was the bird's eye view. And I just love this slide because it really shows you, the others is numbers, and we need to do that for accountability clearly. But at the ground level, this is really what we're seeing. We know that non-infrastructure projects are what transforms culture, what gets people engaged, gets them moving, and really brings vibrancy and innovation to different communities. So we love showing this because this is really what we think we get out of these non-infrastructure investments. So hopefully this is a little inspiring, and I'll move on to the next slide. All right, so Marianne mentioned that today my presentation is really going to look a little bit at non-infrastructure activities beyond Safe Routes to School. I'm guessing that many of you from our conversations with Pedram, we know that there's a lot of familiarity already with the Safe Routes to School model, and getting students to and from school actively through active commutes. But the ATP program really allows for a lot more innovative and transformative projects that reach beyond just the K through 8, a traditional Safe Routes to School age group. So, just quickly, this is an overview slide, and it's actually going to be the framework for the rest of my presentation. I'm going to talk about different project types, regional initiatives, community initiatives, first, last mile, employer-based active transportation encouragement programs. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the types of activities here, and highlight some things that we know are happening in the ATP program, and really being well received. And then, our point today is to kind of introduce these to you as part of the menu of options that you have through the ATP non-infrastructure program. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I mentioned here are the different kind of broader NI project type examples. I'm going to speak about regional initiatives and talk a little bit about what's happening in the Southern California Association of Governments. And I'm sorry, that's an acronym. I know I'm not supposed to speak in acronyms, but I can do some follow up in the chat in case you want those. They have a really wonderful program called Go Human. And so I'm going to talk about that as well as demonstration projects. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bay Area's City of Alameda's program that has one component of their non-infrastructure program that focuses on really building bicycle ridership in adults. And so kind of going beyond the traditional student model. I'm going to talk a little bit about first, last mile non-infrastructure projects that have come again out of the Los Angeles area. I'm going to briefly touch on an example of an employer-based active transportation program that's utilizing actually the great work that my colleague Marianne Hernandez has been central to. And then lastly, given that we've all been sheltering in place affected by the pandemic, and especially our students, I am going to highlight what the San Luis Obispo COG did through their ATP non-infrastructure grant to switch, to pivot when the COVID-19 shelter-in-place orders came about, and what they did. And then I know our friend and fellow presenter today, Tracy McMillan from Nelson Nygaard, is going to be speaking to that pivot too in her presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so first off, I want to highlight this non-infrastructure project that was provided by, that was funded by, awarded to SCAG, and they actually have branded their whole project the Go Human Initiative. And in this project, SCAG, who serves as the Metropolitan Planning Organization, they partnered with cities in their region and with a focus on hosting what are called temporary demonstration projects and also open street projects. So these are activities that are allowed under the non-infrastructure program. And we think they're absolutely wonderful because it gives cities an opportunity to gather feedback on potential planned improvements. And then it's been a very successful way to engage new audiences in understanding potential infrastructure improvements that are all aimed at increasing active transportation convenience and also safety for those that are walking and bicycling. So just want to, maybe pause for 1 second, have you all look at these images. If you haven't seen them already, it's just a way, these are, if you could see, all of these treatments are things that I think if you're on the engineering public works side, you're familiar with separated bikeways, with, curb bulb outs. So these are things that are, can be showcased in a creative way through non-infrastructure investments as part of an ATP award. So next slide, please. Or are we frozen? All right. Great. Thank you so much. So again, I just wanted to showcase, these last two examples. So everyone's familiar with roundabouts, which are really great for slowing down traffic, which is, really important for pedestrian and bicyclist safety. Temporary demonstration projects really showcase kind of what the improvements to the built environment can look like, and then give people that experiential understanding, and then allow for some really key feedback, which we know is associated with future rounds of ATP, infrastructure applications. So all right, I'll go on to the next slide. That's a lot of information. I mentioned open streets before. So SCAG also, through the ATP program, was able to fund open street events, which allowed for the closure of certain select streets to cars as an effort to encourage more walking and biking. There's lots of different benefits associated with open streets. And in some cases, it's really, it can be cumulative. The open street can actually incorporate demonstration projects so that there's an understanding of potential treatments that are going to be made to a specific location. And then there's, given that there's extra space on the street, since it's not used for cars that time, there can be other kinds of more typical safe routes to school activities, such as bike rodeos, helmet fittings, and then bike checks, which are all, of course, allowable under the Active Transportation Non-Infrastructure Program. Next slide, please. Okay, and just very quickly, I'm not going to really go into this, but there is an advertising campaign through SCAG's Go Human program, and that it helps with just kind of the reach of the program. And then I think what's wonderful about SCAG's program is that all of the materials are easily available for co-branding by other partner organizations. So just planting a seed. This is something the counties can consider, regions can consider, and then cities certainly consider these kinds of things in partnership with, you know, their citywide stakeholders. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so that was the first regional initiative with demonstration projects and open streets. Now I'm going to shift gears, get back into kind of the more traditional education, but with with the audience that's beyond the Safe Routes to School. So this is the community initiative that we saw at the City of Alameda, and they did a Bike Safety for All program. And I just want to highlight one aspect of their program, which was largely Safe Routes to School in focus, but what they were able to do through ATP, because our funding allows for this, because it's a composite of state and federal monies, this city, Alameda, was able to work with a local bike coalition who developed a very, very comprehensive bicycling curriculum and conducted adult focused bicycling classes. So those were both experiential and then also involved classroom learning and addressed kind of the issues that are specific to adults that might, include, just a different level of fitness, possibly, kind of a more, a shyer approach, interest in bicycling, and then I think, of course, the family piece is riding with younger children, which is always kind of a for those of us who've done that. It's it's always a little bit of a gets a little, it's easy to get a little anxious when you're doing that. So this class was set up to kind of deal with all of those typical barriers to riding, and then giving a lot of just skilled based work. And the instructors, I've actually had the opportunity to do a site visit. Instructors are so wonderful, so engaging, so encouraging, just what's needed to kind of, I think, help with this mode shift to active travel for shorter distances. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so I did check in with Jim and about first last mile potentials in the region, and if this was going to be relevant, and we're just kind of introduce it today as food for thought. So for those of you who might not know, first last mile is a concept that's used to expand and improve transit access to bus and rail by active modes. And so from a non-infrastructure perspective, we've seen projects that have used ATP funds for community engagement, and this was actually under a plan. But if you're looking to do non-infrastructure education and encouragement around first last mile, what we know what we think at the ATRC at this point is that it really does have to have a clear education or encouragement component to it, and as much as engagement is so essential, there also needs to be kind of that the sharing of information. So for example, we've come up with some ideas such as like how to mount your bicycle for bus travel, the development of active routes to transit maps or things of that nature. So we did actually at the ATRC do a webinar on this topic. Emily had showed you the archives of our webinars, and so one of those was on first last mile, and we encourage you to look at that and ask us questions if this is something that's of interest to you. All right, next slide, please. All right. And then briefly, I wanted to mention the employer-based program, mostly to give a shout out to my colleague, Mary Ann, who helped to develop this wonderful program. So at CDPH, and this is, of course, all was very, very active pre-COVID, we did offer a bike share program, and the program actually was both equipment focused, but also largely invested in education and encouragement. And as such, we have a number of different resources that could be shared out if this is something that you're interested in doing. We don't think that an employer-based program alone is comprehensive, but if this is something that maybe you wanted to build into a larger non-infrastructure project, or possibly, you know, a combination project, this is something that could really be valuable in terms of ensuring that your, you know, your own employee base is and staff are also supportive of active transportation, and so it's really both an encouragement and education opportunity. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and so lastly, this is the last activity that I'm going to speak to. So you know, I mentioned that there were, of the many active transportation non-infrastructure projects that we were seeing during the pandemic, you know, we understand there was so many challenges, and so one project is for us has been really quite wonderful in terms of how they made a pivot to virtual programming. Actually, there's lots of examples, but SlowCog actually did a presentation for a group. They actually developed a bit, I hope I get this right, a Bitmoji classroom. And what they did is they uploaded a number of different video resources, downloadable resources for teachers to use across their region. And what the COG did was all of the programming that was set to happen in person, just, you know, they figured out a way to do it instead virtually. They created this platform, and then they had the PE teachers in their regions actually deliver the education and encouragement. And so this is just an example of the Bitmoji classroom and some of the different resources that are all linkable within the platform that they created. So we thought that that was really wonderful. We have access to that that platform. So for those of you who might be interested, you can reach out and get more information on how they were able to do that. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is where I just say thank you to, they're not here, of course, they're not, most of these organizations aren't from the District 6 area, but we're really grateful to them for allowing us to showcase their work. I'm also, we're thankful for that they're kind of bringing innovation. So, and of course, this is something that we want to see from District 6 too. And we are going to have Shelby McNabb present for us in just a bit. But yeah, so we're always willing and wanting to hear more about what's going on at the local level so that we can share it out at the state level. And last slide. All right, again, this is just our whole team on behalf of all of us. We encourage you to look to non-infrastructure programming to supplement your capital improvement efforts or pursuing them independent, and just to encourage walking and bicycling. And then the last piece is our contact information, which I know is going to be appearing at the end. All right, I think that's all I have today, Marianne.
Thanks so much for that extensive review of some samples and excellent programs that are non-infrastructure, non-safe routes to school. So thanks so much, Victoria. That was a wonderful presentation. I did want to say that to chime in on our ATRC website webinars, we did do a webinar on employee-based bike share programs, not just for state employees. So that's also on our webinar and one of our past ones. So lots, keep plugging that ATRC website. There's lots and lots of many resources there. We had a question. It sounds like someone had a question on.
Yes, and we'll answer this one live. And Emily Abrahams, if you can unmute yourself too. I think you'd offer to help answer this. So Sheila asks, these projects, and I'm assuming the ones that are from the SCAG, example, these projects look like quick build projects. Would something like Go Human be a non-infrastructure project or a quick build project? So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
and this is a great question, and I'll start and then feel free to chime in, Victoria. Yes, we get this question a lot because we want to make sure that people understand the difference. So there is a difference between demonstration projects, which is what Victoria shared that SCAG does, and quick build projects. So demonstration projects are totally temporary in nature, and they only last 1 day to maybe 1 week. And it's all surface level treatments. So things that can be taken away or removed at the end of the day. So you may use chalk or, tape that goes on top of the roadway that, you take off at the end of the day, barricades, cones, A-frame signs to give people instruction. But it's all on top of the pavement, surface level, totally temporary to demonstrate what a new design could look like. Quick build projects, on the other hand, are semi-permanent, and they are classified as infrastructure projects. So although they are flexible in nature, can be adjusted, like I said, they're semi-permanent. So quick build projects may use, paint that is painted on the roadway. That can't be removed at the end of the day. I mean, if you're going to change it, it takes a little bit more effort to change it. You also may use flexible posts or barriers that are actually bolted into the pavement or, glued in some capacity to the pavement, so they're stuck there. And so those types of things are quick build. So it actually is a semi-permanent infrastructure, and those things last, I believe, up to 5 years is kind of what the standard is for quick build. And then hopefully at that point, you can implement permanent solutions to make it stay there for 20 years. But the idea behind quick build is to allow some level of flexibility in a more semi-permanent manner, while demonstration projects, like I said, are removed at the end of the day or as after 1 week. So that's the difference, if that helps, the types of materials and the level of permanency of the materials.
And I see another question coming in. Oh, great. Thanks, Sheila. Thanks so much for asking that question. I actually wonder if you wanted to use this opportunity, Emily, to just maybe do share out this other project that you've been working on, launching in collaboration with SCAG's Go Human program, and specifically the Kit of Parts program.
Sure. Yeah, we're hoping this will start soon. But I think some of those photos that were shared earlier, they come from this project that SCAG did, and it's called the Kit of Parts. So they essentially have crafted the demonstration project materials, so those totally temporary materials that sit on top of the roadway. And so they have this kit that has all these different pieces that you can use, so it makes it really easy for an agency to just utilize the materials that are already there and do a demonstration project themselves. So we've been working with SCAG to implement this Kit of Parts program statewide. So we are doing a pilot project, which will hopefully launch in a few months. And we will be asking for different agencies around the state, an agency from the North State, Central State, and Southern State outside of the SCAG region to participate and do a pilot demonstration project using this Kit of Parts materials that is already developed. So yeah, super exciting. It'll give the opportunity for agencies throughout the state to do this type of project and kind of get the materials delivered as opposed to having to go out and purchase them and create them on your own. So yes, we are excited to be launching that very soon, and stay tuned for that when we are able to select our agencies and get it moving.
I'm just so excited about that. I feel like it's worth a mention. All right. But at this point, I don't think I'm seeing more questions. Or let's see, I think that's answered both of the questions that have come in so far. So I think, Marianne, we can move on at this point.
Thanks so much, Victoria, and thanks, Sheila, for those questions. As Emily said, definitely you're not the only one. We get those questions a lot. The next portion of our meeting will be hearing from 2 local projects, and they'll give you information about their projects as well as tips for a successful long-term ATP project in your region. And our first speaker is Tracy McMillan, and I'll let her go ahead and pull up her slide before I continue with her introduction. And then afterwards, we will we'll have Shelby McNabb speak. Our first speaker is Tracy McMillan. Tracy is an associate principal at Nelson Nygaard Consulting Association in the Oakland office. Her work focuses on helping communities move about in more accessible and sustainable ways for the health and safety of people and our planet. Tracy has been involved in active transportation research and practice in California since the early 2000s, when she was on the team that conducted the evaluation of the first Caltrans Safe Routes to School grant program. She received her PhD in urban and regional planning from the University of California, Irvine, and a master's in public health from Emory University in Atlanta. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you so much, Marianne, and thank you to everybody for the opportunity to speak with you today and to be with you today. What I'm going to focus on is the title of my talk is Creating Compelling Non-Infrastructure Projects, and I'm going to be drawing from our experience working with Stanislaus Council of Governments on their pedestrian and bicycle safety education campaign, a project we did with them over the past couple of years. And then also a recent technical assistance program that we assisted MTC with in the Bay Area, helping agencies work on Cycle 5 applications and then doing a review of those applications and the successful and unsuccessful ones to kind of learn the key takeaways and best practices in that experience. And just to double check, everyone can see my slides. All right.
Yes.
Great. Okay, as I said, so first we're going to talk about compelling projects and then compelling applications, starting with talking about the Stanislaus project. So back in 2019, we had the opportunity to work with StanCog on the what we call the Walk and Roll Stanislaus project. They were awarded a non-infrastructure grant in ATP Cycle 3 to design and launch a regional ped bike safety and education campaign. We were really excited to be the firm that was selected to help them bring to life their vision that they outlined in that grant application back in Cycle 3. And we were excited about it for many reasons, but primarily because we loved the vision of it. Their project, again, it was a regional ped bike safety and education campaign. It was focused on increasing awareness and empathy of road safety for all road users, and then encouraging behavior change for all modes. I mean, a long-term goal would be to actually see the behavior change. But the goal of this project was to really encourage that behavior change. And the exciting thing about this project was the vision that they had laid out for that. This was a diagram that we put together in terms of the way that we saw the vision. It was a really multi-pronged approach that they took to this project. It was grounded in data. There was a great deal of outreach that was done. We did focus groups, we developed a campaign, we analyzed kind of the existing data, the secondary data on the community, had stakeholder interviews to help to put together sort of like a kit of parts in a way in terms of different programs and different activities that could be done to reach different audiences, both upstream and downstream. So not only, you know, the folks that are out being active on the streets, but also activities and events that would be speaking to professionals within the community, the decision makers. And this multi-pronged approach was important so that you were implementing different messages. We were talking across the community to try to increase awareness of road safety, the empathy component really important, and hopefully creating, you know, laying the groundwork for some systems change within the community for active transportation. As I said, the project was grounded in data. So we did focus groups and surveys with the community in order to understand how they were feeling as they were traveling the transportation system within the county. People communicated that they didn't feel safe when they were walking or bicycling, that they felt like the community, the elected officials and the public safety officers could be supportive and instrumental in creating a narrative that creates more empathy towards cyclists and pedestrians, and that we needed to create, they needed to create a message that streets are for everyone, and to reduce some of the stigma of cyclists and pedestrians, and that there was a gap in understanding and awareness of the rules of the road within the community, and that perhaps the project could do more to increase the education of all road users on the rules of the road. Again, another important as we started working on program delivery based on all the data that was collected, one item that StanCog had identified in their original grant application was a train the trainer activity. Again, not only to educate the end user that is riding the bike, but to also to increase capacity within the community of those that are available to educate that end user. So the original intent was to do in-person trainings, LCI trainings, in order to increase the number of trainers that can go out into the community, to schools, to other community organizations, and to work with bicyclists or hopeful bicyclists to get their comfort level and their confidence up while traveling by bike. As Victoria and Marianne mentioned earlier in the webinar, this was actually a project, again, I said we started in late 2019 and we're really rolling out early on in 2020, and then bam, hit the wall of the pandemic. So we were just about to work with StanCog to begin to plan and implement the train the trainer activities, as well as the other project components I'm going to talk about, when we all went into shelter in place. So this component of the project was one of the first things to shift to needing to identify an online training package and then implement that training package over the life of the project, the remaining months in the project. Unfortunately, never being able to then do the actual, see those trainers that were trained, and 6 volunteers ended up doing the training. We weren't able to do any in-person activities for them to implement that training during the project time period. But that was, again, an important piece of building capacity within the community that was implemented. As I mentioned, when March 2020 hit, we did need to make this quick pivot from in-person engagement that was planned. We were planned to do open streets activities, very similar to what Victoria described in terms of what has happened in other areas, such as within the SCAG region. So we quickly moved into online engagement, which really in the end allowed for us to have a more sustained engagement and messaging campaign over the project period. If we had done the open streets activities, that would have been for 1 to 2 weeks in say May and June for the project. Instead, we implemented the in-person engagement, and the walk and roll Stanislaus.com website is still live today. So that while there were a lot of non-silver linings to the pandemic, for sure, one silver lining was to be able to roll out this more sustained engagement aspect. So we worked with Stanislaus, StanCog to develop a website, and again, to try to think about activities that would allow us to engage different target audiences, whether we're looking to engage families or youth or older adults or decision makers, and the type of activities that we could look at implementing. So I'm going to talk about a few of them in the time we have left. We did, just give you some quick numbers, we did have pretty good engagement on the website as a whole, and with some of the other activities that we did implement throughout the course of the project. One of the things, again, going back to this rules of the road idea, we did put together a road rules quiz on the website that asked people 5 questions to test their road rules knowledge, looking at pedestrian and bicycle and motor vehicle behavior and different things that you should or should not be doing when you are a road user. People, when they took the quiz, they would go ahead and they would get a little badge after they took the quiz and were successful in that. And that was a good engaging activity for the website. Another activity that we implemented was a scavenger hunt, and this was promoted via social media actively, or by StanCog and other community organizations. So while this information was all available online and available for download, the scavenger hunt focused on encouraging people to physically go out into the community, masked and socially distanced at that time, and find aspects of the transportation system that are important for transportation safety and placemaking within the community. One of the other major components of the project was an advertising campaign, and the messaging again was informed by the focus group and the survey findings, and it tapped into our shared responsibility aspect of the safe systems approach. And we felt like also it ended up being an important public health message during the pandemic as well. The campaign was produced in English and Spanish, and it included billboards and mobile ads, digital and radio ads, newspaper and bus advertisements on local media channels and transit providers, as well as a television ad that played for 4 weeks on regional PBS stations. And I have the video here. Let me know, somebody give me a quick heads up if the sound does not play, because I think I said it right.
Hey, 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 my NorCal pals. It's looking like another fine day in Stanislaus County. Whether you're walking or rolling, take a tip from me and make safety your priority. If you're cruising by vehicle, cut out distractions. Stay focused and watch your speed. If you're walking, running, or biking, stay alert and aware of your surroundings. Test your road safety knowledge and win prizes at walkandrollstanislaus.com, because we can do better if we work together.
Great. So the last 2 items that we did as part of this project, again, in this multi-pronged approach, one, we had an active transportation safety summit that was targeted towards professionals and decision makers to engage them in conversation about transportation safety within Stanislaus County and the region as a whole, and then to encourage, it was provided a lot of education on the safe systems approach, which again, luckily our Mentimeter poll indicated that message was well received, and it was the main takeaway and next steps that people identified for transportation safety for Stanislaus County. And then we also created an active transportation toolkit that provided professionals with it featured strategies and resources such as funding opportunities, programming, and data source ideas to support pedestrian and bicycle safety within Stanislaus County. And again, as I talked about early on, this was really a strength of this project, that it had this approach that targeted I call people downstream, the actual road user, as well as upstream, the decision makers and the professionals who are making things, are key players in what happens out in our road systems. Two lessons learned from this project was adaptability on everyone's part. We obviously adapted the current events because of the pandemic, as well as the opportunity to adapt and be flexible on the way grants are implemented, given that they're written, maybe 2 or 3 years in advance to from the time that they are actually implemented and awarded, and the agency and or a consultant team is helping them implement it on the ground, whether it's an infrastructure or non-infrastructure project. The other important piece in terms of lesson learned was evaluation. Unfortunately, what was a missing piece in this project was that there was no formal evaluation written into it. And I think that's really important in terms of laying the foundation of your non-infrastructure work as well as your infrastructure work, in order to measure process as well as your progress and towards the overall impacts. But that really does need to be funded and supported through the ATP program as a whole. And I know that it is increasingly so, beyond just asking you to do counts. So one last item, because I know that I'm probably over my time. I want to talk a little bit about the MTC project that we did, which was technical assistance for Cycle 5. We provided assistance to a few agencies in the Bay Area with their applications, and then did an analysis of applications that were submitted in Cycle 4 and 5 in the Bay Area to look at potential best practices, and if we can discern some themes of between successful and unsuccessful applications. And this is infrastructure and non-infrastructure applications as a whole. So we developed this application checklist for people, again, to help you think about all the steps that are involved in implementing an ATP application, and really, how far out in advance, ideally you are looking at it, recognizing that people are challenged with many things and potentially under-resourced. And that's where the technical assistance programs that Emily talked about early on in the webinar are really important to help support agencies that have different challenges in terms of resources, staff, and capacity. So again, some of these key takeaways and best practices that we identified, starting the application process early, which also relates to the support that you need to put those applications together, to be able to connect with advocacy groups or community-based organizations within your community, not only during the application process, but before and during and after, helps to create a more compelling story and narrative and compelling application as a whole. That compelling community narrative is really important. You are a storyteller in your application, and you have an opportunity to really communicate the need in your community, but to try to do so in a compelling way. Again, what is the personal story that exists within your community? If you are in a disadvantaged community, or your project has a direct and meaningful impact on a disadvantaged community within the region, then that's really important to convey. And the last 2 items is to be able to be sure to seek out the technical assistance that is available, whether it's through ATRC or an organization like Safe Routes National Partnership. or if the area MPOs are offering some technical assistance as well. Take advantage of that opportunity. Look to your Office of Local Assistance for support, and maybe talk to them about ideas that you have. And then to also work closely with CTC. They had put out a call for an opportunities for them to come out and do site visits, and that's a good a resource and opportunity to take advantage of. So with that, I will close, and I guess we'll take questions later on if anyone has any for me. Thank you.
No, we can have a few questions to Tracy before we go on to Shelby's presentation. Did any come through?
Hi, this is Victoria managing the Q&A, and we're not seeing anything right now. So
Okay.
yeah, we can, but we'll revisit after Shelby's presentation.
Great.
Great, of course. Thanks so much. Shelby, if you wanted to go ahead and pull up your slides, and I'll go ahead and introduce you next.
Are you able to see them okay?
Yeah, we need the presentation view. Yes.
Oh. How's that?
Perfect. Thanks so much, Shelby. And yes, thanks so much, Tracy, on that, on all the things that you did at StanCog and the pivot, and etc. I really appreciate it, and the best practices for application success. That's and all that's in a toolkit, so that'll be very helpful. Next, we have Shelby McNabb. Shelby works for the City of Fresno Parks Recreation and Community Services Department as a business manager overseeing grants and contracts. She previously worked with the City of Fresno in the Department of Public Works and has experience writing both infrastructure and non-infrastructure proposals to the Active Transportation Program. Prior to her work with the city, Shelby oversaw county-wide educational programming for the University of California and draws on her experience in community education to shape her approach to bicycle and pedestrian safety. Welcome, Shelby.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Marianne.
Sure.
Happy to be here today. So I'll get started and jump right into the presentation. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how to build a comprehensive active transportation program. We'll review our approach over time. The City of Fresno has taken approach over time that has gotten more extensive to really build out the active transportation program that we have. And then I'll share some non-infrastructure education examples that will support comprehensive programming. And of course, there's time available for question and answers as well. I just want to give you a little bit of background. So I came to Public Works and the Active Transportation Program really with experience in social work and community education, not an engineer by training, but working closely with a great team of them to prepare applications. So my background, I have a little over 5 years with Public Works, working closely with engineers and applying for the different ATP grants. And I'm now situated over at Parks, and our department typically handles a lot of the non-infrastructure education related to active transportation. In my time over at Public Works, I prepared 16 ATP applications beginning in 2016 and played a role in drafting the Complete Streets policy along with the traffic engineer in the department and updating the active transportation plan, including community engagement. So I have a history on both the education side of things professionally, as well as the engineering side of things when it comes to the grant applications. So our early approach to ATP was really focused heavily on infrastructure. It was typically an application that was isolated to one improvement area, a signal, a stretch of sidewalk, really not written toward that transformational change that projects later on moved toward. The engagement with the community was mostly observational. You know, we would get a question or a concern from a school about a crossing or a stretch of sidewalk, go observe the situation, and then write that up for the grant. We also did include non-infrastructure education at times, but it typically would be a one-time assembly at the school where the improvement was near. It had limited hands-on experience or experiential learning, so it wasn't really a bike rodeo, but it was more like an educational video presentation type of thing. And we limited that education mostly to students. It wasn't necessarily family-centered to include the adults in the household as well. So this kind of summarizes our early approach. There was a traffic signal needed. We applied for a grant, we installed the signal, and we did an assembly. And on its own, it's wonderful to improve the area for the school and to provide that assembly. But as far as long-term sustainability, we really felt that we could be doing more. So each year, and as many of you know who've applied for ATP in the past, it really requires a lot of continuous improvement to stay competitive. So after each grant application cycle, our grants team, which included myself, engineers in the department, our ADA coordinator at times, really tapped into lots of different folks and their experience. We would get together and reflect on the outcomes of the cycle, talk about what we could improve, the areas that were extremely competitive as they got more and more requirements with applications over the years. So we also reflected on our local priorities because over time those had evolved. We had found that there was a greater push for active transportation, especially with the pandemic, but just generally over time, the priorities were evolving to really demand enhanced infrastructure as well as education. And at some point along the way, as we worked through each application cycle, we started to realize that the active transportation grant is just one piece of a city or a county or an organization's active transportation program. And in order to have the most comprehensive impact, you need to meet the needs with infrastructure, but you also need to complement it with non-infrastructure and view the active transportation grant as just one of many ways to have a program in your community. So that being said, there's a lot of little boxes on your screen now. Hopefully you can read them okay if they're not too small. But we really started to take a systems approach and make connections between our assets. I often got asked, you know, what are some of the strategies you recommend to have a competitive application? And really the most I can really share is that we tapped into things we were already doing so we could hear what the community wanted in this space. So you'll see that the ATP grants is in the green box, and it's just one part of the overall systems approach that the city has developed over time. In order to hear from the community and meet needs for education and infrastructure, we tapped into our existing Disability Advisory Commission to get feedback and thoughts. We also connected with folks who were involved in community-specific plans and used that engagement to get feedback. We attended public hearings for related programs. I know many communities have CDBG funds and hearings that they host annually, and that was a great place to hear some of the needs from the community related to active transportation. We leveraged our community-based organization partnerships. There were several folks who are very passionate about active transportation and excited to provide letters of support, feedback on our different ideas, and even leverage their network with schools to then be written into grants to provide non-infrastructure education. In terms of data, we leverage our systemic safety analysis report to point to that for crash data and different findings about pedestrian and bicycle safety. We also partnered with our regional planning groups to attend different workshops and things that they held and use those information and plans to help make a case for the comprehensive programming that we were seeking funding for. We currently in the Parks Department have after-school programming at various community centers throughout the community. And we leverage those relationships and existing program as a key audience to serve with education going forward. A couple of more ways that we took really a systems approach to active transportation include tapping into youth commissions and neighborhood schools for feedback, partnering with our elected and appointed officials to get surveys. I remember with the first round of Quick Build, we were able to partner with our elected official to collect, I think it was over 400 or 600 surveys to really advocate for a Quick Build project. And we ended up scoring #1 statewide for that project, which is really exciting and wouldn't be possible without the engagement that came from their offices and their community representatives. And then we really tried to leverage other grants. So our ATP grant funds have been used in the past for non-infrastructure education, and we were able to take impacts from those grants and apply for funds through Office of Traffic Safety and other funders as well. So as you can see, it's really a system-wide approach to make connections between existing relationships, planning processes, and stakeholders to build out your active transportation program. Other tips I have for taking more of a systems approach to ATP, work on your active transportation program outside of funding cycles. Although each cycle, there are changes and there are new priorities, at this point, there's enough history available to tell you what types of things really matter to the funder, and you can start to attend meetings well in advance of the grant program opening. Build a multidisciplinary team. Like I said, I had a background in social work and community education, but worked closely with our engineering and our traffic staff to build competitive applications. Attend commission meetings to hear needs and listen to concerns. It's a good practice to do that. I often attended our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission meeting, as well as others, to hear from folks. And it wasn't always at the time of application. It would be just on a year-round basis to build those relationships and capture the needs that were expressed. I mentioned the elected officials already, and I also want to share that we really worked actively to adopt policies related to active transportation in the in-between times. So we moved our program from a focus on just grant funding to a focus on an overall program. And as part of that, adopting policies at the local level were really important, including the Complete Streets policy. We also found that we leveraged funding and partner projects to complement our efforts with related grants or funding that we received from the Sustainable Transportation Planning grants. We would fund preliminary engineering and then use that to apply for ATP grants in the future. I would really encourage most cities, counties, and other applicants to partner with folks who are already out at schools, in parks, with your Parks and Recreation department to tap into audiences for non-infrastructure education. And then use the active transportation program requirements and things that they ask for to incrementally influence change in your own community, so that beyond just the grant application, you're also creating policies that will last well after funding expires. So over time, this really had a great outcome, and we've seen a lot of momentum and support for active transportation. It started with just the active transportation grants and an outdated bicycle and pedestrian plan. We completed an update of the plan in 2017. 2 years later, we had a complete streets policy that was adopted by the Fresno City Council that held the department accountable for incorporating complete streets across all projects and documenting impacts over time as far as new sidewalks, traffic signals, et cetera, to improve things for the residents who wish to travel as a pedestrian or bicyclist. And then in 2022, the department hired an active transportation program coordinator to really continue to facilitate and influence the work. Over time, what started as a grant has really led to more durable bicycle and pedestrian safety education programming that's prioritized and also includes infrastructure investment. So a couple of examples that I'll close with of non-infrastructure that the Parks Department has included in ATP grants and others include a bike rodeo, which is just setting up some cones at a park or an open area and working with children or young adults on different skills, hand signals, and navigating, practice navigating around stop signs and things like that. We also have written into our last ATP grant a pedestrian safety week and encouraging schools to adopt that on a regular basis to do safety education, similar to the way in which they do the 100 Days of School celebration or Red Ribbon Week, really integrating that into a model that they are familiar with. Same goes for Bike Safety Week. And then open street events have been really popular during the pandemic, where you work with your traffic department to close streets and encourage folks to be active, host different booths and educational components as part of those as well. And some additional examples include tapping into after school programs. So there are a lot of folks that attend after school once the school day is done. And partnering with those programs can be a great way to bring bike and ped safety education to areas that are either getting an infrastructure project or even just are interested in participating in the programming. I would encourage you to explore recreation center programs as well, as they offer after school support. Attending school carnivals, which are well attended once COVID restrictions let up, obviously. Or Art Hop in Fresno, we have that community event. So really just attending events that are already happening that draw a large crowd and can be served with bike rodeos or other safety outreach. I think a lot of times it can be easy to become overwhelmed with, I need to reach the community, how do I do that? But in most communities, there's established programs where people gather and would be really interested in learning more about safe ways to travel. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Okay. Hi, this is Victoria monitoring the chat. And at this point in time, we don't have any questions, although there was one question asking if the contact information of our speakers will be available for follow-up, and Shelby had hers in her presentation. I believe Tracy also had hers, and so yes, that will be part of the outgoing follow-up communications following this workshop. Marianne?
Thanks, Victoria. Thanks so much, Shelby. I love several of your slides, but I really liked your slides showing the evolution, that last slide that showed the evolution of your first grant that you got in 2017, creating complete streets policies, which created permanent staffing, which helped build infrastructure, and then the sustained non-infrastructure programming into existing programs. So thank you. You laid it out very clearly, and we always need to hear that over and over. You don't need to recreate the wheel, use what you have. Go ahead, we have a question. Go ahead.
Very good. So actually these questions, I believe are one's for Shelby, and then it looks like one's for Tracy. So maybe both of you can join and we'll do a little group Q&A. So first off, for Shelby, can you elaborate on the Bike Safety Week activities that you did for Fresno?
Yeah, so that one is actually written into our most recent awards. It's scheduled for a future date. I believe it's in either this year or 2023. And we wrote that into a grant for traffic signal installment. Once it's installed around, I believe it's October or November, we'll be scheduling with the school to do Bike Safety Week. And I see the question comes from Tony, and Tony, I want to assure you BPAC will be involved in the planning of that under Public Works leadership. And so we really want to pull together folks from the community to help facilitate the Bike Safety Week and work with schools that are impacted by the signals to pair both infrastructure and non-infrastructure so that students are equipped to really adopt more active transportation modes.
That's a fantastic approach, Shelby. I think it's, when there's new infrastructure that's being rolled out, it's a perfect time for education and really making sure that education kind of fits the context of the environment where children will be crossing or biking. So wonderful. Okay, this next question is for Tracy. So Tracy, circling back to your walk and roll program for Stanislaus, can you speak to measurable outcomes from that program?
Sure, thanks for the question. As I mentioned, evaluation was not a component of the grant, so we didn't have any short or long-term outcomes that were measured as part of the grant program, other than the data that we shared on the number of visits to the website, the number of people that engaged in the different engagement activities like the scavenger hunt. That said, I will say that one of the things that and this is part of what Shelby was talking about in terms of integration and cross-pollination of your planning efforts, within an active transportation program and then outside of the active transportation program. The work that was done on the Walk and Roll Stanislaus campaign was an important component that was then an important resource that was utilized in further planning activities within StanCog. They went on and they did a community transportation needs assessment. We're finishing up a coordinated plan with them, and the information on how people feel about traveling and traveling safety within the county were important data points that informed those projects, and then the projects that the implementation that will come from those plans going forward, such as we've recommended a bus stop safety inventory within the coordinated plan and some other project efforts. So again, I think that's not exactly what you were looking for, but I think it's maybe one of those more upstream potential outcomes that can come from these efforts.
Great, Tracy. I think that's a good start. And I think, I'll just piggyback on an earlier comment. Evaluation is always kind of a difficult task, and it needs to be resourced properly. So if you're pursuing another investment through ATP, it's good to kind of think through how you can build that into the work that you're doing. Knowing that that's how you can sustain your program later on. And I think Shelby was a great example from District 6 that speaks to that continuous improvement planning and that systemic approach. So okay, so more questions. Come on, we want to hear from you. There's one. Yay. All right. Okay, back to Sheila. So this is a question, we're going to answer it live. So would you mind sharing a few words of guidance regarding cost estimates for staff time, volunteer reimbursement, and thinking about how to create a successful budget to value community time? Once grant funds exhaust, what ideas are there to continue to fund volunteers or community leaders for their time? So Tracy or Shelby, anyone interested in going first? And of course, one of the benefits of having this workshop is that we also have our ATRC team on and then all of the Caltrans staff. So please chime in. I think that this is a great question for all of us to weigh in on, from our different perspectives. But Tracy or Shelby, want to take the first pass?
Yeah, I can jump in. We've always advocated for, when possible, and hopefully this will change in terms of restrictions on funding programs in terms of compensation for volunteer time. But if there are opportunities to identify outside resources for that compensation, whether it's, again, budgeting for the time that people spend, providing support for childcare and food. Again, actually providing funds to a community-based organization for the assistance they provide throughout a project period and beyond. There are, again, while there are restrictions on existing grant programs, and again, hopefully it's a drum that's been beaten regularly at various levels. So I hope that we see change in that going forward. But maybe there are other funding streams within an agency that may be able to be utilized to support some of that time that goes into the important work and community members. That's the lived experience and the people that you want to have involved in the project, because they live it on your transportation system every day.
Yeah.
Shelby, I'm sure that you have a contribution here.
Yeah, so in terms of valuing the time, like if you were trying to do an in-kind calculation, I know sometimes volunteer time is used as match. There are different websites that can give you the estimated value. We often use the Nonprofit Leadership Center, which places a $28.54 value on the time. But long-term sustainability wise, I think that's where data is really important. So when you get a project funded and you implement and you have great outcomes that you're able to share both data and pictures and qualitative stories, then you can take that and treat it as an asset and use it to apply for other funds or even advocate for local funding investment. I know that general funds are stretched and it's hard to get additional revenue, but a case can be made when you show outcomes in program for that investment, whether it's grants or local money. And it doesn't happen overnight, obviously, but as you start to, like I demonstrated in our presentation, change policy and get additional calls, you get the local investment of funding a position to help drive this, or you get incremental change at your city or county over time. The other thing I would encourage is tapping into existing resources for activities that may require like one-time startup funding. So if you are a city or a county and you have a recreation department that already runs community programming, it's already staffed, but maybe they just need a couple of loaner bikes and helmets to then run a program for years since they're already delivering services. That's a key partnership that requires a one-time setup and doesn't really require additional resources since they're already staff serving that community, and they may be excited to do new programming with a focus on safety. So I hope that answers your question. Those are some things that I would recommend.
Yeah, Shelby, that was great. And, I think that, in addition to the outcomes, I think you should be looking at the overarching policies of potential funders and seeing where those new alignments might be possible. So I think Shelby did such a fantastic job in terms of highlighting how ATP funds can be connected to other safety programming. And then of course, the connect up with Parks and Recreation is a really valuable one that we, I'm so glad that you were able to kind of stretch that. But that one slide where you showed all of the different partners, the youth commissions, I know at our level, the air quality folks are always great partners. So I think starting early with kind of how you can sustain the program after, the ATP funds are exhausted is one of those activities that I think is really important. And if you can embed that into your scope of work for the project, it's really, I think, important. But yeah, really fantastic examples from both of you. All right, I'm seeing another question in the chat. So for both presenters, was there any focus on involving historically disadvantaged or low income communities in your projects and programs? So let's start with Shelby this time, and then Tracy, you can jump in.
Yeah, so I would say that I mean, it was probably 100% focused on serving communities that have historic disadvantage, low income, high rates of collisions. For ATP program grant purposes, by and large, the funds primarily go to disadvantaged communities, if not 100%. And so most of Fresno, I'd say probably around 75% meets that criteria. But one of the things that we did to really build trust and hear directly from the communities is work with a partner called Every Neighborhood Partnership, one of many partners, but they work in schools that are in severely disadvantaged areas and have parent groups that they gather together on a regular basis. And so we worked with them to hear directly from parents. Parents signed kind of a petition saying, these are the signals that we want installed. We're afraid for our children. And so we really leaned on them as a liaison so that we can make sure that we're hearing directly from parents. The other thing that we did was tap into schools to do surveys. There were Safe Routes to School surveys from the National Center. And we printed thousands of copies, distributed them at schools, and got thousands of responses. So we put those into the system and got a data report on how kids were traveling, what were parents' concerns, provided those in multi-languages, and made English and Spanish, but then made available Hmong and other languages that are already on the website there. And you know, when we got responses in Spanish, we translated them so that we could see what was being said and what were the needs. And I feel that it was very telling, and I've always wished that we could survey like every parent in our school district, because there's 70,000 kids, and that data would be great. We don't quite have funding for that yet, but I would say tap into schools and community partners that serve those communities directly, face to face, and you can really learn a lot. So we made that a priority, and we'll continue to do so.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shelby. Tracy, did you want to also speak to Renee's question?
Yes, I'll just quickly add that for the StanCog project, yes, we did. For the focus groups, we specifically, like Fresno County and the city of Fresno, a good percentage of Stanislaus County is considered a disadvantaged community based on the Cal EnviroScreen 3.0 at the time. But we did reach out and make sure the focus groups were happening in those communities that were, underrepresented traditionally in activities. Also, we, like Shelby, we reached out and involved nonprofits and had on our advisory committee those nonprofits and individuals that could represent the nonprofits in the communities, that to make sure their voices were included. And in that summit that we had at the conclusion of the project, featured the local projects that were really doing the work in terms of continuing to implement the pedestrian and bicycle safety education and public health messaging that happens within the county, as long, in addition to talking about what this project did, but that summit was really about highlighting the local community efforts.
Great. Thank you so much. That was great. I have no idea how we're doing on time, Marianne. Do you want to jump in and let us know? And I'll just say, let's see. One more question. Let's do this one question, Marianne, and then you can let me know with the time in the chat. This is a question specifically for Tracy. Okay, so it's a little bit of a confusing question because of the pandemic, but I'll let you respond to it. Did you hold the 4 open streets events? And if so, were they in the same location or rotated? And then if so, to where? So
yeah, thanks, Anthony. The short answer was, well, I should say it's probably a more complex answer. The answer is there were no physical open street events that were held because our original timeline to do so was May and June of 2020. We went into shelter in place in March 2020, and that was very early on in the pandemic when people were not gathering at all. And we're there were many concerns about gathering. And even in Stanislaus County today, we're still not doing virtual, or still not doing in-person engagement very often in the work we're doing with them. So they were all held in the same location because they were held on the internet. And where people did go out into the community, it was during the scavenger hunt, and we encouraged them to go out with family in the kind of the safe pods that they knew at that point in time.
Perfect. Shelby did do open streets as part of during the pandemic. Did you want to maybe
No,
speak
so
to
it
that?
didn't
No.
happen during the pandemic.
Okay.
That had to be canceled. Yeah, I think with the original shutdown, even outdoors was not encouraged. And so that did impact our award. But I know that it's been really important to folks during the pandemic. They were interested in it. And so hopefully going forward, that can be included in future efforts.
For sure. And, we do at the ATRC have many examples of local agencies, local jurisdictions who were able to host open streets and slow streets during the pandemic, but they were more kind of just road closures to allow for increased walking and bicycling and social distance, physical distance for walking and bicycling. So that was something that did happen. I'm not sure if a lot of it happened under the ATP umbrella, but we do have examples of that. And but I know that's a little off of what Anthony was asking.
Yeah, Victoria, I'll add that, and I know that we talked about that in the middle of this all happening back in June, May or June of 2020. We had to operate within the agency's guidelines and the county's guidelines, and so for a period of time we were in a wait and see pattern, but at some point we had to actually make the physical pivot because of time and budgetary resources. We had to make the shift to either staying in a holding pattern and asking for a grant extension, or pivoting to online and going gung-ho into that. So we reached that point and went gung-ho into online, which was good because the pandemic went on much longer than we all thought.
So true. All right. So I see Marianne. I want to thank you for a robust question and answer period, and take it away, Marianne.
Hi, everyone. We have a scheduled break, which I'm sure we all need, but the next section of our workshop is on cycle 6 and an overview as well as some tips from our Caltrans staff. So let's go ahead and just try for a 3-minute break. I have 11:20 on my clock, so if we can come back at. Thanks, everyone. I swear I just stood up and sat down and 3 minutes had passed. my clock must be in speed time. Yes, we've had a very engaging webinar so far. Thanks for all your questions. It really speaks to what you need, and we want to make sure and meet your needs. So thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. As I mentioned, the next portion of our webinar is on the overview of non-infrastructure cycle 6 ATP. And we'll hear from Summer Lopez. Summer is an associate transportation planner from Caltrans headquarters and assists in managing the active transportation program, non-infrastructure and planned project types, and the Active Transportation Resource Center. Take it away, Summer.
Thank you, Marianne. So we're going to start by giving a quick overview of cycle 6, and then we're going to dive into some details about non-infrastructure application and the 25R scope of work, and then some helpful tips. So this is just a quick reminder. The call for projects application opens March 16th. That's next week, and it closes June 15th. So make sure that you mark your calendar if you haven't already. And this is just here to serve as a reminder for you all. Another reminder is the ATP funding distribution. 50% of the funds go to the state for the statewide competitive program, 10% go to the small urban and rural regions with populations of 200,000 or less for small urban and rural area competitive program. And then 40% goes to the MPO component, the metropolitan planning organizations within urban areas that have greater populations greater than 200,000 for large urbanized areas. All right, and also if you're new to the ATP, we have some workshops and webinars that give really strong overviews of everything about the ATP. So just reach out to us if you need that information. All right, let's get into an overview of non-infrastructure projects. So non-infrastructure is defined as education or encouragement activities that further the goals of the active transportation program. There are 5 project types in the ATP. We have infrastructure, we have non-infrastructure standalone, we have a combination project that includes non-infrastructure and infrastructure, and we also have plans and the Quick Build pilot program. Please note that if you are applying for a plan, the plans cannot be combined with any other project types, including non-infrastructure. Also, please remember that non-infrastructure is not to be used for public workshops for infrastructure projects. So although engagement is a strong piece of all project types, non-infrastructure projects must also include elements that encourage and educate people on active transportation in addition to engaging with them. Non-infrastructure projects can be startup projects or startup programs, or they can be new and expanded components of existing programs. However, ATP cannot fund existing or ongoing program operations. So the CTC intends to focus funding on startup projects, and a project is considered a startup when no program currently exists. A project with new or expanded components to an existing program must demonstrate how the original program is continuing without the ATP funding. So that's the sustainability piece. I think Shelby alluded to that earlier in her presentation as well. So all non-infrastructure projects must demonstrate how the program is sustainable and will be continued after the ATP funding is exhausted. Some examples of this could include developing long-lasting curriculum for students, creating strong student ambassador programs that last for several years, or even continuing ongoing collaborations with community partners that share commitments to the long-term goals. The cycle, for cycle 6, we are releasing a resource on planning for sustainability in your non-infrastructure projects. And as of right now, you can find our recent article on this topic in our newsletter that talks about non-infrastructure sustainability and gives 5 practical ways to plan for it. So I believe we're going to be including, though, a kind of expanded version in our non-infrastructure guidance or as an additional resource on this topic as well. So just look out for that. And if you're interested in kind of getting a preview, take a look at our most recent ATRC newsletter. Finally, non-infrastructure is not limited to those benefiting school students, so they can be community-wide projects. These are the core pieces that make up non-infrastructure projects. So the first is education. Education are activities that teach walking and bicycling safety skills, promote benefits of active transportation, and they can be adapted for different ages, abilities, environments, or contexts. Second is encouragement. Encouragement are activities that generate excitement and enthusiasm for walking and biking. And equity, the third is equity. And equity in transportation seeks to make a conscious effort of investing resources in disadvantaged communities, which are most dependent on active transportation and transit, and should be built into all tasks and activities. Number 4, we have engineering. Engineering strategies can change the built environment to create a safer and more comfortable places to walk or bike. And some examples of these could be their pre-engineering activities. So for non-infrastructure, just remember engineering, as this E is pre-engineering, and it could be things like walk audits or demonstration projects. Next, we have evaluation, and evaluation activities measure both program outputs, which are deliverables, and program outcomes. Evaluation helps to address whether a program is doing what it intended to do. And finally, we have enforcement, and enforcement activities aim to deter unsafe behaviors and reinforce safe behaviors. And you can find all of this information on our ATRC website. We have fact sheets that give examples of each of these E's. And this is an example of a spreadsheet that we have that lays out several of the activities that could fall under each E. It's not an exhaustive list, but you can find this on our ATRC website. And of course, if you need ideas or you just need to brainstorm or anything like that, we do have our non-infrastructure technical assistance team at CDPH. And we'll probably keep coming back to that, because if you do have really specific kind of program level activity questions, you can always reach out to them. Okay, I'm going to jump into the non-infrastructure application and the NI work plan, which is the 25R. So the 25R is a required document within the application, and it is the scope of work for your project. This does get reviewed by Caltrans during the evaluation period to ensure that it meets eligibility requirements and that are laid out in the non-infrastructure guidance. You want to ensure that it is complete, that it is clearly organized and detailed, and that it is consistent with your application narrative. And also that it's in compliance with the ATP guidelines and the NI guidance. So just remember, this is a scored piece of your application. So it's really important that it matches the narrative, that it's consistent, and then also, of course, that it's clearly organized and eligible activities are included. So the non-infrastructure guidance and the Exhibit 25R, just make sure that you take these 2 steps that I'm going to lay out before you kind of start filling things out. So step 1, review the ATP non-infrastructure program guidance. This will give you all of the information on what is eligible for non-infrastructure under our program. We'll share with you this document after our workshop, but just note that it will be updated for cycle 6, and the most recent version will be posted probably next week. Hopefully before March 16th, but if not, it will be posted on March 16th. And just so that you all know, we're not making drastic changes to it this year. If anything, we're hoping to allow for more flexibility through the NI guidance. So if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to Emily or myself, and we'll be able to provide some clarification. Okay, so step 1, review your NI guidance and the ATP guidelines. Step 2, complete your Exhibit 25R, which is your scope of work. So read and follow the instructions on the instruction tab. Make sure that you fill out the cover sheet tab with an overview of your project. And please note that you only need to fill out the top part, because the bottom section of that overview page auto-populates with the rest of the information once you start filling out the other tabs. Next, you would fill out each task tab with as many tasks as you plan to complete. And the tabs include activity descriptions and staff costs, which could include the partners or consultants that you'll have in your project. Finally, make sure that you fill out the other costs tab after each task, which would include travel, equipment, supplies, materials, incentives, and other direct costs. Okay, so how to organize your Exhibit 25R. One of the clearest ways that you could organize your 25R is by the E's. So you could have each task listed by the E's, which were the education, encouragement, enforcement, equity, etc. So we often see that when agencies are planning their non-infrastructure work, they begin each task with one of the E's, and then they list activities that are related to that E under each of the tasks as activities. So another way to list each task could be by school or by the community area, and then listing all of the activities under each task that will be performed at each location. Another way you could do it is chronologically by activity type. So no matter which way you choose to organize it, please make sure that you are very detailed in the task and activity descriptions, and also just paint a clear picture of what you plan to do and how you will do it. For partnerships in your application, the non-infrastructure projects are an amazing way to build long-lasting partnerships in your community, and also with public agencies, community-based organizations, schools, etc. So meet and discuss the project prior to writing your application, and review the drafts and final application with those partners. Also, don't forget to include your letters of support. Another note, although consultants aren't considered a partner, they can be included as part of your application. Just make sure that you follow a competitive process if your project is selected, and you can write consultant to be determined in your 25R under that staff time for consultants. Okay, I'm going to pass it to Emily to go over helpful tips to remember for your NI portion of your project.
All right, so if we go to the next slide, these are helpful tips to remember. It's probably a summary of everything we've already said, as well as what the previous implementers and speakers have said. So it should hopefully kind of sound familiar, and just, you know, keep these in mind as you're filling out your application. So just always remember, explain, explain, explain. The more detail and description as to what you're doing, the better. We can understand it from the program perspective. You know, the evaluators who are going to be reading these can understand exactly what you're doing. So definitely explain and provide detail. Make sure it's clear why the program is needed and how the program will address those needs to increase the number of users. That's really the goal of the ATP. So of course, you know, this non-infrastructure programs help support that goal. So just make sure it's very clear. Be innovative and use the tried and true NI methods. We see both. You know, there's things that work and consistently work, and we see those being implemented through many NI projects. And then many agencies, you know, think outside the box and create new ways, such as what we've kind of had to do during the pandemic. So, you know, there's lots of different ways that non-infrastructure projects can look, and as long as they you know, meet those E's and have the purpose of education and encouragement, there's lots of ways to deliver it. Show how the program idea came about. So your partnerships and stakeholder involvement is very important. And then make sure the program details you are describing in the narrative section of the application is consistent with your 25R, the scope of work plan. There are times when we see, you know, you write about this great thing in the application, and then when we read the 25R, it's not listed anywhere. So we don't want to see that. We want to make sure that, you know, what you write about in the application is also reflected in the 25R. So just make sure you're aware of that. Review the scoring rubrics. The scoring rubrics get posted by the CTC. So make sure that you take a look at those so you know what the evaluators will be looking for. And then, you know, work with your identified partners in writing and compiling the application. All right, and then the next slide, again, just be specific. The details are important. So when you talk about the activities and deliverables you're doing in your program, you know, we want to be able to quantify it. So we want to know if you're doing like one event or if you're doing multiple events over the course of 3 years. So do describe that. And if you're not quite sure exactly, like you don't want to limit yourself to saying we're going to do 10 of these, you can kind of provide a range, say between 5 to 10 of these events, which again, just gives us a better idea of what you're expecting. And then of course your budgeting will reflect that too. Make sure you differentiate what is going to be funded with the ATP grant and what will be non-ATP. We're changing the word in kind to non-ATP. So you might get donations, you might have other funding sources, as was kind of described earlier. So just make sure you differentiate that because what is funded by ATP does have to follow the criteria for the funds, and then what's outside of ATP, you know, can follow different criteria or maybe not have criteria. So you can purchase and do different things with non-ATP money that supplement the project. Just make sure the totals match. I think there's formulas already in the Excel sheet, so it should already, you know, calculate it for you, but double check that to make sure. And make sure it matches what you're actually writing in the application. And this is where we sometimes find the issue with ATP and non-ATP funding. So just make sure it's clear in the application and in the 25R. And then again, just make sure you review the non-infrastructure guidance for what's eligible in terms of costs and expenditures, just so that you're not putting things in there that aren't allowed and we'll have to revise them later. You know, we'd rather you think about it ahead of time, create your program kind of under the guidelines that exist for the ATP. And I think, okay, the last thing, again, if you have any questions, the ATRC has our non-infrastructure specialists who can provide advice and direct you to best practices and link you to resources. So definitely reach out. There's the email on the screen here, and it'll connect you to all three of our non-infrastructure specialists. And so one of them will be able to answer your questions. And then of course, I went over the ATRC website. So look there for anything as well. And I think that's it. So now we'll kind of wrap up with some questions about the ATP, the application, cycle 6, non-infrastructure, whatever you want to know about.
Hi, Emily, this is Marianne. I just want to be clear because, sometimes some of this is new to me, even though I've been here forever. So if an activity is funded through non-ATP funds, it should be listed in the 25R?
Yes, if it's supporting the project, the non-infrastructure program. So I guess if it's a separate activity, I guess it doesn't have to be. I think I'm thinking more of like items that you purchase. So you can purchase, incentives or equipment as part of the non-infrastructure program. And so if you're purchasing any item that's going to supplement the program, but it's not going to be from the ATP funding source, just listed as a non-ATP funding source. Just because sometimes you'll have an activity in there that says you're doing a bike rodeo, for example, but then there's no bicycles being purchased as part of the program. And so it just looks a little odd that you're doing a bicycle rodeo, but you don't have bicycles, but you may have bicycles already, from another funding source. So that's why we just want to kind of connect the dots there.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Okay, so this is Victoria again, and I'm just going to go through some of the questions that we're getting in the Q&A. So love Sheila's participation. So the question reads, could an eligible line item for the 25R be, for example, 10 road bicycles? In other words, I'm curious if agencies can ask for new bicycles and or helmets as part of their proposal. So Emily, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So, a non-infrastructure program, it's activities, and you need equipment to do some of these activities. So yes, you can purchase bicycles as equipment for a program, and helmets as well, any other safety items. The ATP non-infrastructure guidance has some criteria. So, bicycles have to be under a certain maximum cost, just to make sure we're not buying the most, high-end bicycles we can get. We want a bicycle that'll function and is safe, of course, but we just want to make sure it's within a certain, limit of expenditure. And the same with helmets. You can purchase helmets as part of the program that can be reused as you do different events. The same with the bicycles. The purpose of them is to be reused in different events. And then we have incentives. And so incentives are different than equipment. And so there's a little bit of limitations on the types of incentives you can give out. So definitely take a look at the guidance. Helmets can be a major incentive that can be given out. There's just a little bit of criteria, like I mentioned. So yeah, take a look at the guidance. It'll explain a little bit about what can and can't be purchased. But many items you can purchase, and as long as they're used, for the program and for the purposes of safety, education, and encouragement, they can be part of the program.
Great, very comprehensive.
Let me add on to that. It's I'm not sure if it's still applicable, but on bicycles, if this is a federally funded ATP project, do they have to comply with Buy America?
Yes, I think, there are some guidelines to go off of to make sure that, we are purchasing things abiding by, policies and laws.
Thanks, Pedram. Okay, I'm looking at both the chat and also the question and answers and not seeing them, but we do have a little bit of time for
I wanted to share something else, Victoria.
Excellent. Go ahead, Summer.
So we didn't really get to show you the 25R. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through the tabs really quickly. So this was the instructions tab. It lays out everything that you'd need to do. So please review this, make sure you read through all of it. And then this is that overview sheet. So this is the section up here that you would just fill out with all of your project information, project locations, etc. And this section is the section that auto-populates as you're filling out these additional tabs. And we are revising this right now too, as Emily said. We're changing in-kind to non-ATP. It's the same thing, but it's just to clarify that there's ATP funds that can be used, and then if you have any non-ATP funds, which is anything else that your agency might be contributing. So this is what the task tab looks like. You'd fill out all of the task activities and deliverables, your staff time, and then here we have that ATP or non-ATP, and then you would put the ATP total dollars amount and then the non-ATP total dollars amount if it applies. And then down here for consultants, you would want to put that the consultant is to be determined. And then of course, if your project is selected, then you would need to go through a competitive process. But it just lets us know in advance that you're planning on working with a consultant. We don't need to know really who they are up front. So just put it to be determined.
Right. And maybe I can just chime in right there and say that if in fact you're going with a public agency, you don't have to go through that competitive process, correct? So yeah.
Yeah, that's a part. So if you have those partners, or like if there's additional like other public agencies that you're working with, like if it's a school and public works and there's school staff and planners and whatever else, then you can put that under the staff time and agencies.
Great. And one more clarifying question for you, Summer, on this. So just this is required for combination for non-infrastructure and combination projects. Can you? Yeah. So just want to make sure that everyone is, aware of that. And I think in the past, maybe in some past cycles, there was the project was proposed as non-infrastructure, but some of the details on the actual activities might not have made it, at least it weren't developed as maybe they, we would like them to be as part of the application. And so that's that right now. At this point, you want to make sure that message is really clear, that not combination projects also have to do the 25R.
Yeah, and I'll also note, not only is this your scope of work, but it's also your PSR equivalent. So it is a very important document. You do not want to miss out on putting this in. It needs to be in your application for a complete application. And we can also share the PSR workshop after this, which we did. Actually, Pedram helped us out with that. Oh, actually, I think that was our next steps. My apologies. But we do have a PSR equivalent workshop that we can share with you all after this, that kind of goes really into the details of how to do that, not only for your non-infrastructure project, but also your combination or infrastructure project. And this section down here, task notes, this would be an excellent spot to put any additional detail that you maybe don't have space for in here, or if you, like Emily said, if there's donated items, or if you already have like an existing, if you already have like existing bicycles that you're going to use for your bike rodeo or anything like that, any additional detail you want to put, you can put in task notes. And then other costs is where you would lay out all of that kind of funding detail. So travel, any equipment that you need to complete your project, and then supplies and materials. And we also have section for incentives. And there's also ATP and non-ATP dollars in this section too. So you can also fill in the information there as you see fit or as applicable. And that does that for every single task. So just make sure that it's consistent with your application, and that you fill out to be as complete as you can.
Great. All right. So at this point, I'm not seeing any more comments in the chat nor the Q&A. So I think that we can hand it back over to Mary Ann. Thanks for a robust Q&A.
Thanks. Yes. And thanks for monitoring that, Victoria. It's much appreciated. If we could go on to the next slide, and I'll have to The next steps and adjourn slide. We don't necessarily need to have it as a slide. But I do want to, I know the question came up earlier, some people that had to log off earlier, all of this information, the recording, the slides, and the resources that we discussed during the meeting will be sent out afterwards to those who have registered. So don't worry, it'll be coming your way, and then it will be posted on our ATRC website, which is catpresources.org. We can't plug that enough. It's full, it's chock-a-block with information. So thank you so much. And I especially wanted to thank everybody who participated today, all our speakers, Jim, Pedram, Tracy, Shelby, Emily, Summer, Victoria, and Judy behind the scenes, making sure we're on task. So, and you'll see in the chat, you can save the chat before we close if you want to save those emails, but all those will be on the slides or in the follow-up communication and resources. So thank you so much for coming. I hope you found this fruitful, and good luck with your Cycle 6 application for those of you who are applying. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right, great job, great show, good job.